Welcome Cambridge Here's to Just in Case October 2019 by Makrozov. A very humorous extract that you would like definitely from an innocent point of view of a child contradicting the world that we are living in. Very complicated, of course. Text for section A, an extract from Just in Case by Meg Rosa. The extract is about David Case and his 1-year-old brother Charlie. David Case's baby brother had recently learned to walk, but he wasn't what you would call an expert. He toddled past his brother to the large open window of the older brother's room. There, with great effort, he pulled himself onto the windowsill, scrunched it up like a caterpillar, pushed into a crouch, and stood, teetering precariously, his gaze fixed solemnly on the church tower a quarter-mile away. He tipped forward slightly towards the void, just as the large black bird swooped past it, paused, and turned an intelligent red eye to meet the child's eye, of course. "Why not fly?" suggested the bird, and the boy's eyes widened in delight. Seduced by the fact that the bird had spoken to him, the boy threw out his arms and thought, "Yes, fly." David didn't hear his brother think fly. Something else made him look up. A voice, a finger on his shoulder, the brush of lips against his ear. In the instant of looking up, David took the measure of the situation, shouted, "Charlie!" and lunged across the room. He grabbed the child by the cape of his Batman pajamas, wrapped his arms around him with enough force to flatten his ribs, and sank to the floor, squashing the boy's face into the safe hollow beneath his chin. Charlie squeaked with outrage, but David barely heard. Panting, he unpinned him, gripping the child at arm's length. "What were you doing?" he was shouting. "What on earth did you think you were doing?" "Well," said Charlie, "I was bored, just playing with my toys, and you weren't paying attention to me. So I thought I would get a better look at the world. I climbed out the window, which was not easy, and once I managed to do that, I felt strange and happy with nothing but sky all around me. And all of a sudden, a bird flew past and looked at me and said, 'I could fly.' And a bird hasn't ever talked to me before. And I figured, a bird would know what he was talking about when it came to flying. So I thought he must be right." The little boy explained all this slowly and carefully so as not to be misunderstood. "Birdie, fly," were the words which came out of his mouth. David turned away, heart pounding. It was useless to trying to communicate with a 1-year-old, David thought. If I had been 2 seconds slower, he would be dead. He pulled his brother close, tucking him in against his body, pressed his lips to the child's face. What if? He became immersed in what if. The weight, the weight of it wrapped itself around his ankles and dragged him under. A year earlier, David's father had woken him with a shout. "David, your mother is home. Aren't you interested in seeing the baby?" "Not really," David thought, burying his head in his pillow. "I know what a baby looks like." But then they were in his room, grinning and making inane noises in the direction of a small, serene-looking creature with jet-black eyes. David sat up with a groan and peered at his new brother. "Okay, seen him," he thought. David was about to go back to sleep when he noticed the new baby gazing at him with a peculiar expression of calm authority. "I'm Charlie," said the new baby's eyes as clearly as if he had spoken the words out loud. "Who are you?" David stared. His brother repeated the question slowly, politely. "Who exactly are you?" David frowned. The baby inclined his head. Such simple question, he thought. But if his brother knew the answer, he gave no sign. This disturbed Charlie. Over the next few months, he tried approaching his parents for answers. But his father was always at work, and his mother seemed strangely ill-informed on the subject of her older son. And when she caught Charlie staring at David, she merely thought, "How sweet! They are bonding." But they weren't bonding. Charlie was comparing the David he knew with the Davids he saw displayed around the house in family pictures. The younger Davids looked cheerful and serene. They held books or bikes or ice creams and gazed at the camera with expressions of trust. The younger Davids kicked balls, swung from trees, blew the candles on birthday cakes. They had clear edges and cloudless eyes. But the David that Charlie knew now was watery and fizzy with nerves. Charlie had spent a good deal of his short life worrying about his older brother. Now he paused in the middle of playing to gather his thoughts. He saw that his recent attempt to fly had been a mistake. It seemed to have nudged his brother past some invisible tipping point, and this filled him with remorse. Go now for the questions. Section A, reading. Spend 40 minutes on this section. You have 15 questions to respond to. Number one, give one word from the first paragraph which shows that Charlie walks unsteadily. There is, of course, one that is definitely that you should put here, which is, of course, toddle. But there's another word that you should put in mind, which is what teetering. This is, of course, unbalanced walking, describing the kind of walking that you might show, like a woman, of course, with high heels dancing. If for the first time on high heels, this might be unbalanced, of course. So teetering also could be a possible answer, but toddle is a main answer. What does the word void suggest about Charlie's situation? This is in line 6. Of course, he doesn't know what is outside the room. No, there's nothing to catch him if he falls. Yes, this is void. This is emptiness, of course. The other building seems far away. No, this is too far, of course. He wants to catch the blackbird. Oh, this is not the void or empty waiting outside. So it is, of course, there's nothing to catch him if he falls. Explaining all words two ways in which the blackbird behaves like a person. Of course, he looked at him, but mainly he talked. He invited him, why not fly? So of course the looking and the talking. It speaks, talks, communicates, suggests the idea of flying. Why not fly? Suggest this is a very good word, of course, to describe the bird's attitude, suggesting as advice for the little baby child. Okay, why not fly? They met the eyes. It looked at him, watched him, of course, and of course, as he said before, talked to him. Look at line 1 to 10. Give two short quotations which show how Charlie's way of looking at things indicates his feeling. We have two quotation, of course, that he looks sharp. His gaze is looking sharp, fixed solemnly, means seriously, is one. And eyes widen with delight. Of course, this also show his feeling. The eye widening with delight show what his feeling of happiness, of course. Look at lines 11 to 12. What effect is created by the writer in this paragraph? David didn't hear his brother think fly. Something else made him look up, a voice, a finger on his shoulder, the brush of lips against his ear. What could be the brush of lips against his ear? What could be the finger on his shoulder? Who was it? For whom was this finger on his shoulder? Now, what does it show? This adventure? No, of course not. A humor, fun, joke? No, of course. Amazement, puzzle, at what? So it is mysterious. Who was the finger to whom did this finger belong to? Okay, so of course it will be what? Mystery. Look at lines 13 and 16. What two things does the writer use of language in this paragraph tell us about the way David acts? Of course, we have panic. Panicking. David is panicked. And he acts with a speed, urgency. This is an emergency that he should act with a speed. No time to think. With great power and strength, of course, in a rough way, aggressive way, he ran and grabbed him and he put him under his, grabbed him from his pajamas, the cape of his pajamas, and put him down under him. Okay, all this, of course, with protection. He's trying to protect his son, his little brother, of course. This is with great care. Look at lines 20 to 25. What does the limited use of commas and full stops in this paragraph tell us about Charlie? Well, said Charlie, I was bored just playing with my toys and you weren't paying attention to me, so I thought I would No commas. Of course, I would get a better look at the world. I climbed up the window, which wasn't easy, and once I managed to do that, I felt strange and happy. Now, what's inside here? Is he trying to shout? Of course, no. He seems very confused. Okay, no. He's thinking very quickly, of course. What else? He feels angry? No. He's excited. He's very excited. Look at the two sentences in lines 26, 27. Explain in your own words the contrast that the writer is trying to show that in these two sentences. We have, of course, two different attitudes, contrasting a baby child trying to explain himself as an adult, trying to make himself coherent, mature. He knows what he's trying to say, as if he's so sure of himself that he's trying to explain himself to his elder brother. But he can only speak like 1 year old. 1 year old birdie fly can say what he wants to say. Something else comes out, can't make himself understood. So we have a contrast between his attitude as a child, a baby child, 1 year old, and his attitude and the attitude of in his imagination as an adult trying to explain himself in a very coherent adult way, of course. Question number 9. The writer uses irony by saying David thinks it was useless trying to communicate with a 1 year old. Line 28. Explain in your own words why this is ironic. Irony, first, is a contrast. We have three types of irony: situational irony, verbal irony, and dramatic irony. This is, of course, a situational irony. What's a situational irony? What's the contrast? David doesn't realize that Charlie is trying to communicate with him. He's 1 year old. He says that it was useless to communicate with a 1 year old. So this is ironic, of course, because the child was trying to explain himself in a very intelligent, clever way. David thinks that Charlie can't understand anything, but the fact he is very clever, intelligent, very advanced. Look at lines 31, 33. Explain in your own words how David feels at this point in the extract. Of course, David is traumatized. This is a very dangerous situation. Panicked, scared, overwhelmed, shocked. But the word traumatized is very beautiful, very expressive. What else? Appalled means horrified. This is a very strong word. He's disturbed by the situation. His brother almost killed himself. Little brother, baby brother, was on the window, was about to jump out of the window, and in a minute he will be dead. And maybe he will be held responsible because he was not paying attention for his little brother. The writer uses techniques of flashback to describe events that have previously happened in the extract. Flashback shed light about previous events. This is, of course, the opposite of foreshadowing. Foreshadowing gives you a hint or clue about future events, but flashback here gives you past events because it explains the present situation. This is the purpose of flashback. Give one short quotation that shows this. We have here examples: a year earlier. So the writer stops current events, go back in time a year earlier to shed light about what? About David and his life. Look at lines 34, 39. Which of David's actions suggests that he doesn't want to see his new brother? Give two examples. Of course, we have two examples. Burying his head, he buried his head in the pillow. In the groaning, of course, groaning that he doesn't seem very happy about the newcomer in the family. Of course, definitely might take a lot of attention from him. Give one short quotation from the text which suggests that David is embarrassed by his parents. Of course, the inane noises that they were making, trying to play with the new baby. Of course, this made him a little bit disturbed. Look at this sentence, this disturbed Charlie. What does this refer to? Of course, it's David's lack of response. Explain in your own words how the David that Charlie can see in the family picture seems different from the David that Charlie knows. The David pictures on the walls, of course, of the house show that he's very happy, jovial, very nice word to confident, calm. When they are taking picture to him eating ice creams or celebrating his birthdays or swinging and in a tree, having fun, more trusting, less stressed. All this, of course, is totally different from the full of nervousness David that you knew now. Question number 15 is nice and challenging at the same time. Complete the table below to show how Charlie seems much older than a 1-year-old child. He tried approaching his parents for answers. This, of course, shows curiosity. He's trying to understand. He's trying to ask questions to understand the situation. He shows concern for other people. Of course, here he's worried about his older brother, worrying about his older brother. He recognizes the consequences of his actions. He nudged it down. His recent attempt to fly had been a mistake. This, of course, he is measuring the situation and realized the consequences of his actions. He nudged his brother past some invisible tipping point. Means he's considered the situation, filled him with remorse. Means what? He regrets. He is filled with sorrow. He's filled with shame. He's filled with regrets. He feels that this was his fault, of course. Let's go now for the writing section. Now you will have to write a diary entry. And this, of course, will be a little bit different from writing directly affection and the usual plot of having exposition, rising action, and then climax sort of event, then falling action, then finally the resolution. Of course, here you will have to address your diary in an intimate way as a friend. In the exposition, we'll talk to the diary. Now we will start our diary entry by addressing the diary in an intimate way. Dear diary, today, and you mention the date and the time, and you mention, of course, the situation, which was unusual. Then describing it. Then what the challenging events which you managed to overcome by breaking the door or calling the police or reporting unusual event. Then what? The outcome of the whole situation, bravery and dedication. How did you manage to save the day? Then finally, emphasizing the power of courage and determination to overcome adversity or troubles. And you should put in mind, of course, what kind of conflict, whether, because it's still a fiction that you're writing. Is it an external conflict or internal conflict? Or you mentioned both. This, of course, will be magnificent if you manage to put both, of course. External conflict. Now you are challenging a fire, or you are facing a fire. So it will be man versus nature, element of nature, which is fire. Explosion, of course, is still nature. If it's a thief or a robber trying to break into the house, this is man who will be man against man. If the whole community of the club, for example, is trying to bully a homeless child, this, of course, man versus society. Then the internal conflict within you, yourself, the struggle to defeat fear against personal safety. Now, you described the emotion that was going inside you. Looking back, I'm proud that I stayed calm under pressure, of course. This is finally, you can culminate or end your diary entry using this statement, of course, which will be very expressive or interesting. See you with the next selection. Shalom. Good luck with your writing.